Welcome back to the deep dive. We are unpacking a stack of notes today that is honestly, well, it's a little sharper than what we usually handle, literally and figuratively.
It is. It's a very specific, very pertinent look at power. And not the kind of power you get from, voting or writing a sternly worded letter. We're talking about the power of consequence.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
The difference between saying you're going to do something and making someone believe, in their bones that you've already done it.
Right. We're exploring this concept of facta non verba, which is
Deeds, not words.
deeds, not words. And to really get our heads around this, I think we have to start with a scene that is, well, it's burned into the retina of basically everyone who has owned a television in the last 50 years.
I think I know where you're going with this. It involves a horse, doesn't it?
You definitely do. Picture this. It's Hollywood, late 1940s. You are in a bedroom that just smells of money. I mean, we're talking 600 thread count silk sheets, heavy velvet curtains blocking out that California sun.
The whole 9 yards.
And in that bed is Jack Woltz. He's a movie executive. He's the king of his world. He makes stars. He breaks careers. He is, the man.
And he sleeps like a baby.
Right.
Because he absolutely believes he is untouchable.
Exactly. So he wakes up. The sun is just starting to creep in. He feels something wet in the bed and heavy. He pulls back those very expensive silk sheets. And he screams.
The primal scream.
Because right there, nestled next to his legs, is the severed, bloody head of his prize racehorse, Khartoum. A $500,000 horse.
The Godfather. It is absolutely iconic. But what's so fascinating about the material we're diving into today is that it refuses to look at that scene just as, a great piece of cinema. It treats it as a masterclass.
A masterclass in what?
In communication strategy.
A masterclass. That sounds a little clinical for a severed horse head.
Well, let's peel it back a bit. Why did that happen? The context is everything. The Corleone family, they wanted a favor. They wanted this actor, Johnny Fontaine, cast in a war movie that Woltz was producing.
Right. And they sent their lawyer, the consigliere Tom Hagen, to ask. And Hagen didn't, kick down the door.
No, not at all. He did it the right way. He flew across the country. He wore a nice suit. He spoke very politely. He used logic. He laid out the benefits. He used words.
And that was the problem, right?
That was the entire problem. See, Woltz, the executive, he looked at Tom Hagen and he didn't see a threat. He saw a subordinate. He saw someone asking for, a recommendation letter.
He's used to people asking him for things.
All day, every day. And Woltz had this personal grudge against the actor. Something about an olive oil voice, charming one of his young mistresses, or something like that.
So it's petty.
It was completely petty. And he let that pettiness dictate his response. He thought, I'm rich, I'm famous, I run this town, I can just say no to this guy in the, cheap suit from New York. He had no idea what game he was playing.
He misread the room, or misread the entire situation completely. He thought he was in a negotiation, but he was actually in a survival situation and didn't even know it.
Precisely. He dismissed the words. So the family had to pivot. They had to switch to deeds, facta non verba.
Okay, but, and this is the crucial part, that our notes really hammer home why the horse? Why not just kill Woltz?
That's a million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. If you can get into his bedroom, past all his security, to plant a horse head, you can definitely get in there to, slit his throat while he sleeps.
Exactly. Killing him would have been easy. It might have even been simpler. But killing him is a strategic failure. A dead enemy is useless to you.
You can't negotiate with a corpse.
You can't. And you certainly can't get Johnny Fontaine in the movie if the producer is dead. Killing him sends a message of chaos.
So the horse head was, what? A memo?
It was the ultimate memo. It's a message that conveyed two things instantly that 1,000 words or even a direct threat never could. First, absolute capability.
We can get to you.
We can get into your most private sanctuary while you sleep, and your money and your guards can't stop us. And the second thing, which is maybe even more terrifying, is absolute intent. We are willing to destroy something beautiful and expensive and innocent just to make a point.
It changes the calculus for him immediately. He isn't thinking about his grudge anymore. He's thinking about his own neck.
He's thinking, what else do I love? What else is valuable to me? He realizes that the only reason he woke up that morning is because the Corleones allowed him to wake up.
And that is the core thesis we are exploring today, isn't it?
It is. The most effective enemy isn't a dead one. The best enemy is one you own.
One you own. That sounds incredibly sinister.
It is sinister. But from a certain point of view, it's also the foundation of a certain type of stability. You want an enemy who is alive, breathing, and fully acutely aware that their continued breathing is a gift.
A gift you bestowed upon them.
Exactly. You put skin in the game for them. You align their survival directly with your interests.
Skin in the game. I mean, we hear that phrase a lot in business, right? Usually from hedge fund managers trying to sound tough. But here we're talking about literal skin.
Very literal skin. And the notes we have today, they take us on a pretty wild ride to explore this concept. We're going to go back to 11th century Persia to look at the order of assassins.
Okay.
Then we're going to break down the difference between strategic assassination and modern terrorism, because the notes are very, very clear that they are not the same thing.
That sounds controversial.
It is. Then we're going to look at how history lies, especially about war casualties. And then we're going to land right back in the present day to see why the smartphone in your pocket is actually a modern version of a dagger.
Wow. Okay, it's a journey from, like, a mountaintop fortress to the subway station.
That's a good way to put it.
All right, so let's start with the history. The assassins. Now, I have to be honest. When I hear assassin, my brain immediately goes to video games. You know,
Yeah.
guys in white hoods doing parkour off of rooftops.
Or just a hired gun, a hitman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just a contract killer.
Most people do. But the historical reality of the Hashishins, which is where the word comes from, the order of assassins, is much more complex and, frankly, much more interesting.
So who were they, really?
They were a Shiite sect, a smaller branch of Shia Islam called the Nizari Ismailis.
Mm-hmm.
They were active roughly between the 11th and 14th centuries, mostly in Persia and Syria. And crucially, they were surrounded by powerful Sunni empires, like the Seljuk Turks, who viewed them as heretics and wanted to wipe them out.
So they were the underdogs, geopolitically speaking.
Massive underdogs. They couldn't field an army of 50,000 men to meet the Sultan on the open plain. I mean, they would be slaughtered in an afternoon. So they had to invent a new way of fighting, a new way of projecting power.
Asymmetric warfare.
The original asymmetric warfare. And this is where that deeds, not words philosophy really takes shape. Because the notes point out something that sounds completely counterintuitive at first.
Which is...
The assassins didn't actually want to kill that many people.
Wait, hold on. Really? They're literally called the assassins. Their whole brand is assassination.
I know. But think about the economics of it. Think about the strategic outcome. Killing a sultan is, as the notes call it, cheap messaging. But it's incredibly expensive in consequences.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so you kill the sultan. Great. What happens next? His son takes over. And the son might be even more competent, or worse, more ruthless. The son will definitely be angry and looking for revenge.
You create a martyr. You create chaos.
You create chaos. And chaos is very hard to manage. It's unpredictable. The assassins were all about control and predictability.
So what was the goal, if not, racking up a body count?
The goal was control, submission. They wanted to turn the enemy leader into an asset. And to do that, they had to prove they could kill him without actually doing it. That was the art form.
Okay, I need an example. How do you prove you can kill the most powerful man in the world without actually harming a hair on his head?
All right, let's look at the story of Sultan Ahmad Sanjar. This is around the year 1118. Sanjar is the new Sultan of the Great Seljuk Empire. He's a big deal. He rules over modern-day Turkey, Iran, big chunks of Afghanistan. He has armies, wealth, palaces, the works.
And I'm guessing he didn't think much of this little mountain sect of assassins.
Not at all. He actively snubbed them. They sent peace negotiators to his court, and he refused to even meet them. He basically left them unread.
So he had that same arrogance we saw with the Hollywood executive. I am the Sultan, you are nobody.
The exact same fatal arrogance. He dismissed them as a nuisance, a pest to be dealt with later.
So the assassins decide it's time for a deed.
A very specific, very quiet deed. So Sanjar is sleeping in his palace, and we have to imagine the security here. This isn't a suburban house with a Ring doorbell. This is a fortress. Guards at the gates, guards in the halls, guards at his bedroom door. It is a bubble of steel. Sanjar goes to sleep safe and sound. He wakes up the next morning, maybe stretches, calls for his breakfast, and then he looks down at the floor, right next to his bed. And sticking out of the hard ground is a dagger.
Just there, in the middle of his room.
Just there, planted firmly in the ground.
Yeah.
And attached to it, or delivered very shortly after, is a message from the assassins.
What did it say?
The message is just chillingly polite. It says something to the effect of, "We did not wish to disturb your slumber, O great Sultan, but know this. If this dagger had been intended for your soft breast, the hard ground would not have stopped it."
Whoa, that is effective. That is terrifying.
It's utterly terrifying. Imagine the psychological impact. The first thing he thinks is, my guards are useless. or worse.
His guards are working for the assassins.
His inner circle is compromised. It means his walls are made of paper. It means that while he was at his most vulnerable, unconscious, dreaming, someone was standing over him with a weapon and made the conscious decision to spare him.
It flips the power dynamic instantly. Sanjar thought he was the lion, but he just realized he's the gazelle, and the lion just decided not to eat him for lunch today.
Exactly. And so the question is, what did Sanjar do? Did he rally his armies and march on the assassin castles at Alamut?
I feel like that's what a movie character would do. Find them and kill them all.
In a movie, yes. In reality, no. Sanjar was a rational actor. He immediately understood he had skin in the game, his own skin. If he attacked, he would die. Not his soldiers, him. So what did he do? He made a deal.
He sent them a fruit basket.
A very, very expensive fruit basket. He sent them gifts. He paid them a regular pension, basically protection money. He granted them territory and allowed them to operate freely.
So he just paid them off.
He did. And the historical record says they lived happily ever after, relatively speaking. The assassins owned him. They got everything they wanted. Sovereignty, money, safety, without having to fight a single battle.
It's ruthless, but it's just incredibly efficient.
It's the highest form of leverage. And they didn't just do it to Sanjar. They did it to everyone, even the great Saladin.
Saladin, the guy who fought Richard the Lionheart. The hero of the Islamic world who reconquered Jerusalem.
The very same.
Yeah.
Even he wasn't immune. There's a story where the assassins managed to infiltrate his camp during one of his campaigns against them. This time, they didn't put a dagger in the ground. They did something even more subtle.
What was it?
They left some poisoned cakes next to his bed with a note. And the note basically said, "You are in our power." Another version of the story is even better. They sent a message informing him that the meal he was about to eat, the food on his own table, had been prepared by them.
They poisoned the food.
No, that's the beauty of it. They didn't need to poison it. They just needed him to know that they could have poisoned it.
Oh, that's worse.
It's so much worse. If they poison him, he dies. His brother takes over and launches a massive war of revenge. If they tell him, "We control your kitchen," they own his mind. Every single time he takes a bite of food for the rest of his life, he thinks of them.
It's a form of psychological torture. You'd never feel safe again.
Which is why Saladin, too, eventually reached an accommodation with them. The assassins understood that true power isn't about the body count. It's about access. It's about owning the enemy's imagination.
You know, the notes mention a connection here that really surprised me. The assassins and the Knights Templar. I mean, usually history paints them as total opposites, Christian crusaders versus Muslim heretics. But the notes suggest they were actually quite similar.
Yeah, they were mirror images in many ways. They operated in the same territory, often at the same time. And oddly enough, there are records of them fighting on the same side against a common enemy. But the deeper connection is in their code.
The chivalry aspect. You're saying the assassins were chivalrous.
In their own way, yes. The assassins, despite the name, weren't bloodthirsty maniacs. Like the Templars, they had a code. For the Templars, it was protecting pilgrims. For the assassins, it was protecting their community. And they viewed their method of warfare, this targeted surgical assassination, as a humanitarian act.
Humanitarian? That's a stretch. I'm going to kill you for the good of humanity.
Well, look at the alternative. In the medieval world, war meant two massive armies smashing into each other. Thousands, tens of thousands of peasants conscripted to die in the mud over some dynastic squabble.
Right. Farms burned, cities sacked, collateral damage was basically 100%.
Exactly. The assassins argued, why should 10,000 peasants die because two sultans are having an ego trip? It's inefficient and it's immoral. If we can target the sultan directly, if we can make the leader bear the risk of the war he wants to start, we can prevent the war entirely. We save the peasants.
That actually makes a terrifying amount of sense. Is putting the cost of the war on the person who decides to start it.
It forces the decision maker to have skin in the game. Yeah. If kings and presidents had to personally duel every time they declared war, we'd have world peace by Tuesday afternoon. The assassins try to enforce that logic with a dagger.
It's fascinating. But this brings up a really, really sticky subject, because when we talk about non-state groups using violence to achieve political goals, in the modern world, we have a very specific word for that.
Terrorism.
Terrorism. And this is where the notes get very specific and, frankly, very controversial. The argument here is that we are making a huge category mistake in how we talk about violence today.
A massive one.
How so? What's the mistake?
Well, we tend to lump everyone who isn't a government army into the terrorist bucket. If you're a rebel, you're a terrorist. If you're a freedom fighter, you're a terrorist. If you're a cult member, you're a terrorist. The notes argue that this is intellectually lazy and strategically blind. It says there are two fundamentally distinct categories of violence, and they function completely differently.
Okay, let's break them down. What is category 1?
Category 1 is what the author of our notes calls indiscriminate killers.
Right.
This is your Al-Qaeda, your ISIS, the so-called moderate rebels in Syria who turned out to be anything but moderate.
And what's the defining characteristic of this group?
Target selection, or more accurately, the complete lack of it. Their violence is random. They bomb a marketplace. They drive a truck into a holiday crowd. They shoot up a concert. They kill civilians, women, children, anyone.
And what's the strategic goal there? What are they trying to achieve?
That's the problem. Often, there isn't a coherent one. It's about creating noise. It's about performative cruelty. The notes describe these people as finding a low-error way to go to paradise. It's a kind of nihilistic vanity. They aren't trying to own the enemy in a negotiation. They are just trying to destroy and terrify.
The notes are pretty harsh on this group.
Extremely harsh. The argument is that these are terrorists by any objective definition. There is no code. There is no restraint. They aren't trying to spare the peasantry. They are deliberately slaughtering the peasantry to make the evening news.
Okay, so that's the basement level. Pure chaos, pure destruction. What is category 2?
Category 2 is strategic political assassination. This is where the author places groups like, say, the Irish Republican Army, the IRA during the Troubles, the French Resistance and WWII, certain Shiite organizations like Hezbollah, and going way back, the Judean Sicarii.
The Sicarii, I've heard of them. Those were the guys fighting the Romans in Judea, right?
Exactly. First century. The name comes from the Sicca, a small dagger they would hide in their cloaks. Now, the Sicarii were absolute brutal, no doubt about it. But they were specific. They didn't just kill random Roman tourists in the market. They targeted Roman military commanders and, maybe even more importantly, they targeted collaborators within their own society.
So it was a form of internal policing as well.
It was strategic. If a high priest was taking bribes from the Roman occupiers to desecrate the temple, the Sicarii would take him out in broad daylight. The message was crystal clear. You cannot sell us out. It had a clear political goal: independence and religious purity.
And the French resistance fits in this bucket too.
Absolutely. When the French resistance assassinated a Nazi officer like Reinhard Heydrich, it wasn't random. It was a calculated military act to disrupt the chain of command, to punish a specific act of cruelty, to show the occupation that there was a price to be paid. They weren't bombing French bakeries just to make noise.
So the key distinction is targeting. One group kills indiscriminately to create chaos and headlines. The other kills, or threatens to kill, to achieve a specific political outcome or shift the balance of power.
Right. One is a death cult. The other is a military force using asymmetric tactics. The assassins, our notes argue, are the ancestors of Category 2. They are the professionals. They have a code.
The author of these notes actually has a personal connection to this world, doesn't he? It's not just an academic exercise for him.
He does. He grew up in Lebanon during the Civil War. He attended the Franco-Lebanese Lycée in Beirut. And he has this very dark, but also very funny observation. He says he sometimes goes online and checks the notable alumni list for his old high school.
And what does he find there?
He says that basically everyone on the list is famous for one of two things: assassinating someone or being assassinated.
Laughs.
Yeah.
That's incredibly dark.
It is. But his point is that he's the only one on the list who is notable for just writing books. And he implies that in that part of the world, having someone try to kill you, it's actually a kind of status symbol.
How so? A status symbol?
Because it means you matter.
Yeah.
It means you have skin in the game. If nobody wants to assassinate you, you probably haven't taken a stand on anything important. You're irrelevant. The threat of violence is, in a very twisted way, a validation of your influence.
It's a deadly badge of honor.
Exactly.
This idea of signaling of violence as a message, it leads us to a really interesting section in the notes on the economics of murder. I never thought I'd say economics of murder, but here we are.
It's a fascinating tangent. There are researchers who study the black market for contract killings. And generally, in the criminal underworld, if a mob boss wants to get rid of a rival, or a husband wants to get rid of a wife for insurance money, it costs more to make a murder look like an accident.
That makes sense. I mean, you have to stage a car crash or fake a heart attack or make it look like a robbery gone wrong. It takes planning. It's harder than just pulling a trigger in a dark alley.
Right. You pay a premium for subtlety because your goal is to avoid getting caught. You want deniability. But the notes say that in the world of political assassination, the logic is completely reversed. You have to pay more to make it look intentional.
Why would you do that?
Because of the credit. Think about it. If your political rival dies of a stroke at age 55, he's gone, sure, but nobody fears you. The next rival steps up and thinks, hey, bad luck for Bob, but I'm healthy.
You don't get any leverage from it.
You get zero leverage. But if Bob is found with a very specific symbolic dagger in his chest or, a horse head in his bed, everyone knows you did it. You get the reputation, and that reputation acts as a force field. It deters the next 10 guys from even trying to cross you.
You're paying for the billboard, essentially. You're not just buying a hit. You're buying an advertisement for your own lethality.
You are buying ownership of the future behavior of your enemies. It's an investment in fear.
Speaking of numbers and investments, the notes take a hard left turn here into statistics, specifically war statistics, and the author seems to have a real beef with some modern historians.
A major beef. You've probably heard the theory. It's been popularized by people like Steven Pinker, that the world is getting safer, that violence has been in a long, steady decline.
Yeah, the long peace theory. The idea that if you look at the percentage of people dying in wars, it's been dropping for centuries, that we're more civilized now.
It's a comforting thought, isn't it? Well, the notes say, not so fast. The author, along with researchers like Pasquale Cirio, argues that this entire theory is built on a foundation of bad data, specifically something they call inflation theory.
Inflation theory, what does that mean?
It's the idea that historical war numbers, especially from the ancient world, are massively systemically exaggerated. We read in textbooks that the Mongols killed 2 million people in a single campaign, or that an ancient Roman battle had 500,000 casualties. The notes argue those numbers are almost certainly fake.
But why would they be fake? I mean, usually history is written by the victors. Wouldn't they want to hide the bodies? Or wouldn't the losers want to minimize how badly they were beaten?
That's the key insight. In these ancient conflicts, both sides had a powerful incentive to lie, and they both wanted the number to be higher, not lower.
Okay, walk me through that. Why does the aggressor, the winner, want a higher number?
Let's go back to the Mongols. Genghis Khan. His primary strategy was terror. He didn't want to have to fight a bloody siege for every single city in Asia. Siege warfare is expensive, it takes months, you lose a lot of your own men.
So he needed a reputation that would do the work for him.
He needed to be a monster. Yeah. So when he sacked a city, he made sure the rumors spread far and wide. We killed everyone. We built a mountain of skulls. We spared no one. The goal was to make the next city down the road so terrified that they would just submit and open the gates. Inflating the kill count was a strategic weapon. Submission is cheap.
Okay, that makes sense for the Mongols, but what about the victims? If I get beat up in a fight, I don't go around telling people I got beat up by 100 guys. I try to downplay it.
But in a national conflict, victimhood is a powerful asset. If you are the victim, you want to show that you faced overwhelming demonic odds. It's not, we lost a battle. It's, we were overwhelmed by a horde of millions. We are martyrs for civilization. It rallies support. It validates the suffering. It becomes part of your national story.
So you have the killers saying, I killed 1 million people because I'm strong, and the victim saying, they killed 1 million of our people because they are evil. And the historian 500 years later just writes down 1 million killed.
Yeah, exactly. And the reality might have been 50,000. It was a mutually beneficial lie that gets solidified into historical fact.
Is there any actual proof of this?
Right.
Or is it just, speculation?
The notes point to genetic evidence, which I think is the coolest part of this argument. The author argues that if these warriors from the steppes had really wiped out entire populations, killed all the men and taken all the women, as the stories go, we would see a massive genetic replacement in those regions.
You'd see Mongol DNA everywhere.
Everywhere. And we don't. The genetic impact of those invasions is surprisingly small.
Yeah.
The author argues that major gene transfer throughout history usually happens through slow migration people moving for better farmland, or because of climate change. War leaves a huge cultural imprint, language, laws, religion, architecture. But the soldiers often go home, or they remain a small ruling elite. They don't genetically replace the entire population.
So the history books are effectively propaganda pamphlets that we've just accepted as data for hundreds of years.
Pretty much. And the notes argue that it still happens today. The author brings up the Hama massacre in Syria back in 1982. This was a conflict between the Assad regime, Hafez al-Assad, and the Muslim Brotherhood.
I remember reading about this. The numbers cited for the death toll vary wildly.
They do, and that's the point. Originally, right after it happened, diplomats and journalists on the ground estimated about 2,000 casualties. Horrific, but a specific number. Over the next few decades, that number just drifted. It swelled to 10,000, then 20,000, and now you often see 40,000 cited.
Was there new information? Did they find new mass graves? Did they open new archives in Damascus?
No. The information didn't change at all. The incentives did. The Assad regime liked the high number because it sent a clear message. Don't ever mess with us. Look what we're capable of. And the opposition liked the high number because it helped their narrative. Look at this genocide. The world needs to intervene, send us money and weapons. It was a mutual benefit lie.
That is deeply, deeply cynical.
It's deeply human. We use numbers as weapons just like we use daggers.
So we've covered assassins, terrorists, and lying historians. Let's shift to politicians, because the notes have a very interesting and, again, controversial take on how assassination, or at least the threat of it, actually used to be a tool of governance.
Yes, it's a provocative idea. There is a quote from a German diplomat, Count Ernst zu Münster, about the Russian Constitution back in the 1800s. He said it was, quote, absolutism tempered by assassination.
Meaning the Tsar could do whatever he wanted, up to the point where someone killed him for it.
Right. It was the only real check and balance of the system. If the leader went too far, if he starved the peasants too much or offended the nobles too deeply or lost a stupid war, he got a knife in the back. It put skin in the game for the monarch.
And the argument here is that modern politicians, they don't have this.
They don't. Not even a little bit. And the author of the notes is clearly really frustrated by this. He looks at someone like François Mitterrand, the former president of France. Mitterrand was in power for 14 years.
That is a very long time.
It's longer than many French kings reigned. And think about the power Mitterrand had. He had nuclear weapons. He had a modern surveillance state. He could regulate every aspect of the economy. He had more actual, tangible control over a French citizen's life than Louis XIV ever did.
But Louis XIV had to worry about his food taster and his brother and the court nobles.
Exactly. Mitterrand had no physical risk whatsoever if he screwed up the economy. Well, he retires with a great pension. If he gets the country into a bad war, he writes a memoir and blames someone else. The worst thing that happens to a modern politician is they lose an election and get a 7-figure deal to go on the lecture circuit.
The downside is completely capped.
The downside is zero. There is no skin in the game. And the notes contrast this with the Roman Empire. We usually think of Rome as this chaotic, bloody mess of assassinations. But the author argues the system worked because of the constant turnover.
How high was the turnover?
Get this. In the first 400 years of the Roman Empire, less than a third of the emperors died a natural death.
Less than a third? That's not a job. That's a death sentence with a corner office.
It was an extremely high-risk profession. There was one year, the year of the 5 emperors, where they burned through 5 guys in 12 months. If you were a bad emperor, if you were a Caligula, a Nero, a Domitian, you were removed. The Praetorian Guard killed you, or the Senate declared you an enemy of the state, and you were forced to commit suicide.
So the argument is that the physical fear kept them, for the most part, in check. Or at least it prevented the really incompetent or insane ones from staying around for 40 years.
Yes, it was a brutal but effective form of term limits. It ensured that the person making the life or death decisions for the entire empire was also personally facing life or death consequences for their failures.
Okay, so just to be very clear for our listeners and for any government agencies that might be monitoring this feed, we are not advocating for the assassination of politicians.
No. Definitely not. Please do not do that. It's a historical analysis, not a policy proposal.
Right. But the philosophical point stands. We have engineered a system where our leaders are almost completely insulated from the consequences of their actions.
That is the core point. We have lost the feedback loop. And when feedback loop in any complex system is broken, that system becomes fragile. It becomes corrupt. It drifts from reality.
So if we can't use daggers anymore, then we probably shouldn't be putting horse heads in people's beds. What do we have? The notes take a really surprising pivot here. They argue that we do have a weapon, a modern dagger, and it's in our pocket right now.
It's a smartphone camera.
This is where the deep dive gets very practical and very relatable for anyone who's, lived in a city in the 21st century. How is a camera a weapon?
To understand this, we have to look at how human behavior has changed over time. Go back, say, 500 years to a small village. Everyone knew everyone. If you were the village baker and you were a jerk, if you kicked a dog or screamed at an old lady or shortchanged a customer, everyone saw it. The gossip spread. The next day, nobody bought your bread.
Reputation was currency. Your social survival depended on it. You were constantly watched.
Exactly. You were watched. But then we invented cities. We moved to London, New York, Tokyo, millions and millions of people. And suddenly we had anonymity. You could be a total monster on the subway, scream at someone, push them, and then just get off at the next stop and vanish into the crowd. You'd never see those people again.
Anonymity brings out the worst in us. The notes call it the inner asshole.
It does. It breaks that feedback loop of reputation. But the camera fixes it. The camera reintroduces the village watcher to the anonymous modern city.
The author has some great personal stories about this. He seems to be a magnet for conflict, by the way.
He really does. There's this one story. He's on the subway in New York, and he's just standing there looking at a map on the wall. Totally innocent behavior. He's a tourist. He's trying to find his way. And suddenly this guy in an expensive suit, a well-dressed corporate type, starts screaming at him.
For what? Just for standing there.
For blocking the flow. The guy is just unhinged. He's hurling insults. Veins are popping in his neck. And he feels totally safe doing this because he thinks, I'm a powerful guy in a suit. This is a random tourist. I can dominate him and face zero consequences.
No, in 1920, the response would be a punch in the nose. Facta non voba.
Right. But today, you punch him, you're the one who goes to jail. He sues you, you lose. So the author doesn't say a word. He doesn't argue. He slowly reaches into his pocket, pulls out his phone, holds it up, and takes a very clear picture of the guy's face.
Click.
And the reaction is instantaneous. The guy freezes. He puts his hand over his face. He panics. He turns around and literally runs away down the platform.
Why? What is he so afraid of?
Uncertainty. He has no idea who the author is. Is he a journalist? Is he a blogger with 1 million followers? Is he going to send that photo to the guy's boss? Is he going to post it on Twitter with the caption, does anyone know this guy from JP Morgan who harasses tourists? Suddenly, the anonymous bully has a permanent record. His reputation is now in the hands of the stranger he just insulted.
The author owned him without laying a finger on him.
He owned his future. It's the modern version of the dagger in the ground. I have this weapon. I could use it to destroy your career. I haven't used it yet, but I could.
There's another great one about a parking spot, right?
Yes. A classic urban conflict. The author is patiently waiting for a parking spot to open up. A car pulls out. And just as he's about to pull in, another car swoops in from the other direction and steals it. The ultimate jerk move.
We've all been there.
We have. And the normal reaction is to lean on the horn, scream, maybe get out and have a shouting match. The author does none of that. He gets out of his car, walks over, and calmly photographs the guy's license plate and the guy's face.
And what happens?
The guy, flustered, immediately backs out of the spot and drives away. He couldn't handle the risk. The camera pierced that bubble of anonymity and reintroduced consequence.
It's incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly dangerous. I mean, we've all seen Karen videos. We've seen people's lives completely ruined because a 10-second clip was taken out of context and put on TikTok.
And this is the most critical part of the notes. This is the ethical core of Facta non Verba. The author's very, very clear on this point. He destroyed the picture.
He didn't post them. He just deleted them.
Never posted them. He deleted them immediately after the person corrected their behavior. He argues aggressively against web shaming or web mobbing.
Why? I mean, if the guy was a jerk, why not let the internet eat him alive? There's a certain satisfaction in that.
There is, but it's a dangerous satisfaction. He argues against it because of proportionality. It's what he calls a tail risk. If you post that photo online, you lose control of it. The internet mob doesn't know context. They don't know mercy. They might get the guy fired. They might find his address and harass his wife and kids. They might drive him to suicide.
It's a nuclear response to a parking dispute.
Exactly. That's not justice. That's destruction.
It's not strategic.
It's not strategic at all. Remember the assassins. They didn't kill Sultan Sanjar. They left the dagger to correct his behavior. If you destroy the parking spot stealer's life, you're just a terrorist. You're Category 1 indiscriminate violence. If you take the photo to make him move his car and then you delete it, you are a strategist. You are using the threat to restore order.
That is a really fine line to walk, though. It requires a lot of self-control. It feels good to post the photo. It feels good to get the likes and the validation of the mob.
It does. But that's vanity. Facta non Verba isn't about vanity. It's about effect. The deed is taking the photo. The restraint is deleting it. That's the whole philosophy in a nutshell.
It reintroduces shame and consequence without causing permanent, disproportionate ruin.
It forces the person to reflect. Not, my life is over, but, wow, I was acting like an idiot and I got caught. I should be better.
This all leads us to the philosophical landing zone of the deep dive. The Knights bring up Plato, specifically the Ring of Gyges.
Yes, it's a classic thought experiment from Plato's Republic. The character Glaucon is arguing with Socrates, and Glaucon tells a story about a shepherd who finds a magical ring that can make him invisible.
The ultimate superpower.
The ultimate superpower. And Glaucon says, look, if a man had this ring, if he could never be seen and never be caught, he would be a monster. He would steal, he would kill his enemies, he would seduce the queen. Glaucon's argument is that morality is just a social construct. It's just fear of being watched.
So we are only good because we are afraid of the police, or our neighbors, or God. If you take away the eyes, you take away the morality.
That's Glaucon's cynical take. Socrates, of course, disagrees completely. He argues that a truly just man would behave the same way whether he was invisible or not. He does good because it is good, not because he's seeking a reward or avoiding a punishment.
So how does the smartphone camera fit into this ancient debate?
The camera effectively breaks the Ring of Gyges. In the modern world, the camera ensures that you are never truly invisible. The watcher is always there, in everyone's pocket.
So we are all forced to behave, whether we are truly just or not.
We are forced to be prudent, at least in public. But the notes go a step deeper on the idea of virtue. The author suggests that true virtue isn't just about pleasing the watchers. It isn't just about performing for the camera.
Because sometimes the crowd is wrong, sometimes the mob is wrong.
Exactly. Socrates was put to death by the crowd. He irritated the watchers in Athens because he wouldn't compromise his principles to be popular. So the camera creates this paradox. It makes people behave better in a superficial sense. Fewer parking spot thefts, fewer subway shouting matches. But does it make us more virtuous?
Or does it just make us better actors?
That is the question. And the final thought the notes leave us with is a real challenge for you, for me, for everyone listening. Are you behaving well because you are a good person deep down? Or are you just behaving well because you know everyone has a camera in their pocket?
That is a heavy question to stare at in the mirror.
It is. But I think the practical takeaway is an empowering one. You have this tool. You have the camera. You can use it to protect yourself, to assert your boundaries, to own your space in the world. But the true measure of your character is in your restraint.
The dagger in the ground, not in the chest.
Precisely.
Well, I'm definitely going to think twice next time I'm on the subway. And I'm definitely not going to snub any polite request from a guy named Corleone.
A very safe bet.
This has been a wild one. From Persian mountains to Hollywood beds to the modern digital panopticon. Thanks for guiding us through the history and the strategy here.
My pleasure. It's a good reminder that human nature doesn't really change. Only the tools do.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening. Keep your daggers sharp, but more importantly, keep them sheathed. We'll see you on the next deep dive.